ready to begin the conference? This is the conference coordinator. Are we ready to begin the meeting?
right, so let's take our seats. We'll be getting started again. And topic 2 panelists, if you could start making your way up to the panel table. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. I'll make sure I check in. Okay. Yep. Okay. Let's see. And Tammy, are you back? Oh, okay, you're on your way. Okay, great. Take your time, it's okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started again. We want to thank you for a really rich discussion in topic 1. I know that we didn't get to all of the comments, so if as you have more to add, we encourage you to go to the public docket and make sure you enter your comments there. We want to read them, we want to capture them all, so please definitely go visit that website and enter your comments. And the other note I just want to mention is that we do have evaluation forms that have been passed out. They're also on the registration desk, I believe. So please make sure you fill those out, and that'll help us a lot to hear your feedback. Okay, so let's get started with topic 2. And once again, I'll have the topic 2 panelists introduce yourselves when it's your turn to speak. A really quick overview of what topic 2 is covering. This is on current treatment approaches to PAH and patients' perspectives on these treatments. And we want to hear from you. What are you currently doing? What is your treatment regimen? Is it working for you? And how do you know that it's made a difference for you? How do you know that it's working for you? And if you could point to specific examples on how you know it's working for you. What are the most significant downsides to these treatments? And what specific things would you look for in an ideal treatment? So let's get started with our panel. And Tammy, would you like to go first? Make sure you press the red button. There you go.
Hello. Hi, my name is Tammy Pixler, and I was diagnosed in 2008. My current treatment plan is I take Revatio, Tracleer, and Ventavis. I'm on oxygen 24/7. I use a pulse oximeter to monitor my oxygen levels throughout the day and when I exercise. I maintain a low sodium diet. I limit my fluid intake, and I also take a very hefty dose of Lasix every day, except today I did not. I do light cardio exercises. Each of these medications took a couple of months to start feeling the effects. For Revatio, it's a pill 3 times a day, and after a little while, I did feel a little bit more energized. Tracleer was then layered on, and that's a pill that you take twice a day, and you have to take a monthly liver function test, and my improvements after a few months were significant. I could tell it in my oxygen levels, I could tell it in my energy and my stamina. Then Ventavis was added. And this is an inhalation nebulizer, and you're supposed to take it 6 to 9 times a day, and it has a very tedious maintenance requirement. I noticed a big improvement in my oxygen levels, my stamina, after taking that therapy for a few months. This combination of drugs is working really well for me, and I am so grateful for the improvements that I've achieved through my whole routine. I can do multiple errands in one day. I rarely need to take a morning or an afternoon nap. I have much more energy and stamina to accomplish daily tasks, as well as enjoy some leisure time and low-key activities. The downsides to these medications are there are no automatic refills for the drugs. They're provided through a specialty pharmacy that calls you every month for each medication, wants to know how many pills you have, and they schedule deliveries for each one of those. Travel is also to be considered. You either have to get early delivery, or you have to have it rerouted to an alternate location. And that's the same for my oxygen as well. And Ventavis is a nebulizer, and you're supposed to take it at least 2 hours apart, and each treatment takes about 10 to 15 minutes by the time you put it together, take it apart, and actually do the treatment. And the parts have to be just stored in distilled water. The nebulizer has to be wiped down with alcohol after each use, and all of the parts are washed daily in a distilled water and Dawn detergent, and then rinsed in the distilled water. And then once a week they have to be boiled to be sterilized. The prescribed dosage is 6 to 9 treatments a day. When I first started these treatments, I can tell you I was not awake for 12 hours a day to be able to accomplish that. The most I was ever able to do consistently was 7. I was never able to do 8 or 9 in one day. My current dose is 5, which is manageable, and I use about 2 gallons of distilled water a week. And again, gallons of water, bringing them into the house, very heavy, not an easy task to do all the time. I need to make sure that my medication bag for my Ventavis is ready to go. I need to make sure the nebulizer is charged. My oxygen tanks are full. I have a stash of AA batteries for my oxygen tanks. And this ensures that I'm prepared for any kind of power outages or the need to leave the house unexpectedly. Leaving the house is a process. I have to determine if I need to take my Ventavis with me or if I can get my 5 doses in throughout the day. I also need to determine how much oxygen I need to take with me. Usually I take minimally 2 tanks, which are about 5 pounds apiece. No longer can I grab my keys, my purse, and run out the door. What would help? A medication that's as effective as Ventavis but lasts longer so that the treatments only need to be done 3 or 4 times a day. A medication that's effective as Ventavis but is in an inhaler in form instead of a nebulizer. A less cumbersome cleaning and maintenance process would be beneficial, and also medications that do not contribute to fluid retention. For oxygen, and I know this is more supposed to be medication driven, but if we could have lighter portable tanks and a truly portable oxygen concentrator with continuous flow greater than 3 liters a minute and a longer battery life, that would be very great for me as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tammy. We have Colleen.
Hello. Before I begin, I'd just like to take a moment to thank the FDA for having us here today. As you well know, in a rare disease state like pulmonary hypertension, it can be a challenge to feel heard, and we really appreciate you taking the time to listen. I was diagnosed on January 2nd, 2008. What I thought was shortness of breath due to being deconditioned from having a baby and a high-stress job was in fact pulmonary hypertension. From the night I went to the ER for an unrelated illness to the point of diagnosis was actually just 2 weeks. And we know it often takes well over 2 years to get a diagnosis, if not more, so I was very lucky. I currently take 3 medications, Adcirca, Letairis, and Tyvaso. I'm also on nocturnal oxygen. For the first couple years after diagnosis, I needed digoxin, but do not any longer. To begin, I wanted to try 1 treatment at a time so that I could gauge which might be helping me and how I might be impacted by side effects. We started in the beginning with Revatio, which was later switched to Adcirca for convenience. We added Letairis about 8 months after the Revatio, and I felt okay on those 2 medications, but there were definitely moments my pH stopped me short, particularly when it came up to keeping up with my son, who was a toddler. I caught swine flu when it came through in 2009, and I was unable to fully recover. So it was at that point that we added Tyvaso, which had worked quite well, and it was soon after I started taking it that my activity levels started to come back up. And today I feel like I function just about as well as I did prior to diagnosis, which is a huge improvement for me. In addition to all these treatments, I have practiced integrative medicine almost from the beginning. I believe that the pH medications alone are not enough. I could see how they helped a great deal, and I could also see how they would never work as well as I wanted them to if I used them as a standalone approach. I take supplements, which are carefully selected with the help of my naturopathic doctor and the go-ahead from my pH specialist. I exercise several times a week, and I try to have a spiritual practice that keeps me in balance. I also overhauled my diet a few years after diagnosis and am now vegetarian. After studying nutrition for some time, I felt that a vegetarian diet was the most heart-healthy and conscientious decision that I could make. I do think I fare better eating and living this way because fighting disease is a mind, body, and soul approach. My current treatments in conjunction with lifestyle practice control the shortness of breath and heart function quite well, but as we heard earlier, nothing has been able to touch the fatigue that comes and goes. The medications have definitely improved quality of life. However, they also kind of run my life because every 4 hours I'm taking something. I was due for a Tobias treatment at the break, and I opted to push it back because I was afraid I would cough through this presentation. So you do have to plan sometimes. My quality of life is also impacted by the specialty pharmacy system. I've personally experienced quite a few barriers to getting my medications in a timely fashion, primarily due to issues with the order and delivery process. And I know many other patients have experienced the same, some even being forced to go without treatment or getting dangerously low on vital medication because the system does not always work as smoothly as it should. I've taken an active role in addressing these issues with the help of the Pulmonary Hypertension Association. In fact, we now have an entire system in place where many of our key players in the pharmacy industry are taking their own direct role in gathering and analyzing patient feedback and working with PHA to build on best practices as well as improve in areas where there is need. The downsides to the treatments themselves include the nagging cough from the nebulizer and acute nasal dilation, which makes it a little uncomfortable to breathe through my nose on a good day and impossible if I get a minor cold. The equipment can be somewhat cumbersome. One key area of impact for me is actually psychologically related. I understand that it's a mandate that I must use 2 forms of birth control, get monthly pregnancy testing and monthly pregnancy counseling because of one of my medications. And I can't stress enough the emotional toll that monthly counseling can take on women like me. We do not want to have to relive every month the way this disease has taken one of life's most precious gifts of being able to have our own children. And yet we're forced to, as if we could ever forget for a minute what this disease has done not only to our lungs and hearts, but to our families and our lives as well. Assuming that there is no complete cure directly on the horizon, my dream is to have treatments where the side effects don't impact us just as badly as the disease. I want equipment that doesn't get us treated like potential criminals at the airport because we carry high caliber medication. Or better yet, no need to carry equipment at all. If there were more ways to titrate up and down on oral medications more carefully, that would be wonderful. I'm 5'2". I don't know how the same Letairis dose works for me as it does for someone much larger or smaller. Finally, I would like FDA-approved medications for children with pulmonary hypertension. This is a pretty tough disease to handle as an adult, but we have a lot of options. I would love to see so much more research and opportunity for the kids. Right now, we know the outcome of PH for children is likely worse than it is for adults, and then any treatment that might be selected or prescribed off-label. Additional research and trials that will get our kids appropriate treatment options would be priceless. Again, thank you for taking the time to hear us today and to weigh our thoughts and ideas moving forward. I feel confident speaking for the PH community and saying we very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Colleen. Lucille?
Hello, my name is Lucille Monco. I'm 53 years old and I have idiopathic PH. I was diagnosed in August of 2010. Unlike many of the others, I was fortunate enough to have a primary care physician who listened and sent me to a knowledgeable cardiologist who made the difference. He took immediate action once the diagnosis was complete. My pulmonary systolic pressure was between 80 to 100. By the end of September, I was hospitalized and began a combination therapy of Rhomoduline IV and tadalafil at Circa. My only choice was sub-Q or IV, and it was determined that the IV would cause immediate relief and assistance to me. In addition, I take a diuretic, a beta blocker, several vitamins, and an allergy suppressor, which is actually for another medicine that I take. I try to maintain a healthy lifestyle by limiting coffee, caffeine, eating healthy, minimizing salt intake, and getting plenty of rest. This is very difficult because I have to limit the water intake. I cannot perform vigorous exercise. I do not sleep well because of the meds and waking to readjust my IV line so that it's not being pulled or tangled. Hence the need for extra coffee and or protein to maintain energy. After 2 years, Letairis was added to my treatment because my second cath showed slight improvement. My Rhomoduline dose was at 108 nanograms. Most recently, this increased to 120.5 nanograms as my latest cath in November showed a lowered pressure of 60. It was about a 25% improvement, but my doctors still thought the numbers should be better. They recommended titration to 130 nanograms. I wasn't ready for this. Mentally, I wonder if I have any other options if the treatments do not work, or if any of the other meds would make more of a difference. I do believe, however, that without this treatment, I would not be alive today. Days when I miss my morning scheduled tadalafil, I feel sluggish by noon and notice breathing is different, slightly harder. Similarly, if I do not replace the Rhomoduline within that 24-hour shelf life, I feel like a wall is against my chest. A slight tightening begins. It's a little difficult to explain, but it's a different feeling that I have when my medicines are not taken as scheduled. The meds do allow me to have a new norm. I can do almost anything I used to before diagnosis, but if I do overexert myself, I pay for it the next day by resting the entire day. I still work full-time, but I'm granted telework every other day. This allows me for the needed recuperation time. Having the meds allow me to continue with life even though I have to stop and take a rest or take deep breaths to keep on going. The meds are very strong, and I feel the general side effects, but I also feel the lack of oxygen throughout my body. I joke that oxygen doesn't go to the brain anymore. I often feel dehydrated. I hate the tube in my chest. I hate cleaning the site and changing the dressing and carrying an emergency kit, which I have used a few times. My line is always getting caught on something. I smell like the medicines I take. My skin coloring is always flushed. This is not a tan. And I hate that there are many medical persons not versed in pH, the respective meds, and how they should be administered. For me, the ideal treatment should include information, statistics, and/or examples that would explain to me why certain meds are used and others are not, why doctors choose the treatments they do, perhaps a protocol that is proven effective. I'd like to see more natural and/or alternative treatments studied and approved for pH, treatments that are age appropriate for pediatrics, for geriatrics, if they should live that long. FDA approval of the internal pump that administers the Rhomoduline. I can't say that word. But mostly I'd like to see full coordination and communication between all government agencies and medical participants to work together on a best treatment and possible cure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucille. And next we have Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy Gosling. I was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension in 2006, secondary to lupus and mixed connective tissue disorder. Prior to diagnosis, I had finished 2 marathons, the Chicago and the DC Marathon. And at the time of diagnosis, I was working full-time as a medical sales rep. I also have a background as a licensed occupational therapist of 24 years. At the time of diagnosis, my pulmonary pressures were between 80 and 100, and I was short of breath with all activity, even just sitting and resting. I was immediately started on 2 oral medications, Revatio and Triclear. Within 6 months, my doctor wanted me to start Rhomoduline. At first, the subcutaneous route was presented to me. However, the pain that I experienced was unbearable, and the only way that I can explain it to those of you that don't have a sub-Q treatment is it feels like a hot burning iron is on your skin continuously. So I opted to go the IV route, and I've never looked back since. So. There were a variety of other prescription medications added to address fluid retention and meds to counteract the side effects of my medications, such as potassium. The way that it impacted my daily life I chose to take my Lasix at night so that I could continue to work full time. I was also on oxygen therapy for 2 years, 24/7. So I left my house with my medications on board, all my oxygen tanks for the entire day, and made sure that I was going to be near a toilet at all times or ready to stop because of the side effects of the medications. I also started following a low sodium and low fat diet, which was recommended by my doctor, which was at the time of initial diagnosis was hard for me to grasp at first because I had never been on a true diet before. And I had a little bit of a pity party for myself saying, well, if I'm going to have this diagnosis, I want to be able to eat what I would like to eat. But then I soon realized that embracing eating a low sodium diet made me feel better and counteracted the fluid retention that I was experiencing. I slowly started to improve, and after about 2 to 3 years, that was my turning point where I was able to come off of the oxygen during the day. I was able to start integrating some exercise in addition to working full time. And, I went ahead and made the decision to switch from Revatio to Adcirca because, to be quite honest with you, the midday dosing was getting missed. When you are trying to maintain an active daily schedule, stopping to take an additional medication during the middle of the day just got forgotten. So a couple of years ago, we decided that we wanted to make a drastic change. We decided to move back to California from Texas at the end of December. We sold all of our belongings, including our house. We wanted to simplify life and enjoy the weather that would allow me to improve my health. So just the act of moving and being around a community of excessively healthy people kickstarted a new adventure in alternative health. I cut out all artificial sweeteners, sodas, and made a strict conscious effort to stay under the 1,500 milligrams of sodium per day. Shopping at the local farmer's market and eating organic, as well as going for walks and exercising, has become a newer normal, as I am now only short of breath with attempts at jogging or climbing more than 3 flights of stairs at a time. Now I have added personalized supplementation with vitamins and minerals and striving to follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So in summary, yes, my drug regimen has been effective, but it hasn't changed after year 1. Yet my function and feeling of well-being has steadily improved with each year now. I'm now 8 years post. In my 6-minute walk test, I can surpass 640 meters. So is it the medication after a certain point, or is it lifestyle with the medication? I know it's going to take a new medication that has proven benefits over my current regimen in order for any changes to be made, since I am doing so well. I would love to not be on IV, but I will not trade my function for it. My ideal treatment would be one that allows me to receive my medications in the least invasive way possible with the least harmful side effects. I would consider the implanted pump over my current IV strictly for the additional freedom it would allow me to swim or shower without fear of an infection. A treatment option that would allow for the greatest amount of freedom and flexibility, such as a monthly infusion or longer, or a patch would help normalize our lives. I would like to see some new options other than reinvention of the same drugs to different forms or versions. I would love to see the concept of personalized medicine carry over into the PH community. DNA testing that would show which medication within a category would work best for our individual genetics using the simple swab test that they're currently using for other drugs. I would also like to see how the newest advances in stem cell, such as growing new lung tissue, and genomic technologies, such as genetic decoding manipulation, may benefit us. I am very grateful for all the new treatment options available to us with PAH, but with the advances in technology, I would like to see alternatives other than IV, sub-Q, and oral options. If those are the only options, then I would like to see some developments in smaller pumps, pain-free delivery systems, and alternative oxygen delivery systems that are less cumbersome.
Thank you, Stacy. And Katie?
My name is Katie Tobias. I am 27 years old. When I couldn't breathe, they said I had asthma. I was passing out and they called it epilepsy. 3 years and several specialists later, I was finally diagnosed with PH in September 2006. IV Rhomoduline was started immediately, and Revatio was added a year later. Breathing and heart function had greatly improved. I went from knocking on death's door to living a relatively normal life. The palpitations started in July 2010. Letairis and digoxin were added. By November, I was using 4 liters of continuous oxygen and could barely walk without gasping for air. With every exhale, there was an intense squeezing pain in my back. The Rhomoduline dose was raised several times, but my condition only worsened. I transitioned to Flolan in November 2010. Flolan is considered the gold standard in PH treatment. I was on the drug for a little over 2 years, and it was the worst experience I've ever had. The pain started halfway through the transition. It felt like every last piece of skin was constantly being pinched. The sharp pain never went away. The slightest touch made me want to scream. Sitting on the couch sometimes took up to 8 ice packs, 1 to sit on, 1 under each thigh, 1 under each foot, 1 under each arm, and 1 to hold on to. Over time, the pain just went deeper and deeper. I remember saying, "It's like my blood hurts." I went through several different narcotics in a little over 2 years. Each one only helped for a few months. Despite around-the-clock use, the pain never fully went away. On a 1 to 10 scale, with 10 being the worst pain you ever felt, my good days were maybe a 6, but the bad days could easily be a 10 or above. I tried Veletri, but couldn't finish the transition. The pain was 10 times worse. I am still on Revatio and Letairis. In February 2013, I successfully transitioned from Flolan to Tyvaso. Within a week, I was completely pain-free. Tyvaso liberated me from the tube in my chest and the machine at my waist. I no longer feared the next site infection, the next line break, the next life and death crisis. Breathing is better than ever, and so are the test results. However, there is now extreme pressure and bloating every time I eat. Nosebleeds can start suddenly and can last 45 minutes or more, often causing me to vomit blood and blood clots. Mood swings have changed drastically. It's as if someone flips a switch and I am suddenly ecstatic. A few hours later, flip the switch again and I'm absolutely terrified. Then content, then depressed, then livid, around and around several times a day. Steps have been taken to help relieve these issues, but I never had them before Tyvaso. But I would gladly take a bad day on Tyvaso over a typical day on Flolan. Every drug has side effects, but every drug also has the potential to improve lives, to save them. I hope that one day the pills we take will be just as effective and as strong as the IV medications we have now. Until then, I hope we can find a safer and more reliable alternative to the central lines currently used for IV treatments. Site infections mean extended hospital stays, and line breaks mean life-threatening emergencies. I was on IV medications for about 7 years. The central line had to be replaced 6 times. 5 of those times were because the line broke. When IV medications have a half-life measured in minutes, like Flolan, every single time that piece of plastic breaks, your life is in jeopardy. I had 1 site infection and a few infections under the skin when a new line was placed. I even had a piece of an old line left inside of me. In spite of all the negative effects these drugs have, I would have died without them. Life with PH is not easy, and the current treatments are not perfect, but these treatments enable us to defy the odds with every breath we take. We are alive, we will live to see tomorrow, and tomorrow may hold the cure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. Let's give this panel a round of applause. I know it's difficult to talk about such a personal story, but we truly are grateful that you're here sharing this with us. Now, one thing I do want to do is we're very grateful today to have the pediatric perspective in the room. We have Martha Gonzalez here. And Martha, would you like to share just a few comments before we open up to the greater group?
Yes. Hi. Like she said, my name is Martha Gonzalez. My son, Daniel, could not make it today, but I brought a picture of him. It's not a recent one. I am the mother of Daniel, an 8-year-old patient. Daniel was diagnosed with PH when he was 1 year old. He started his PH treatment with low doses of Revatio. Every month, the dose was increased until he reached 20 milligrams 3 times a day. As we all know, proper dosage in child patients is a puzzle for many PH pediatric specialists, which is why it has to be well monitored. Reaching the proper dosage of 20 milligrams took months to achieve. However, the hard work paid off, as Daniel's pH is stable and showing no sign of progression since then. His specialist decided to be proactive as Daniel was growing and added a second medication to his treatment, inhaled treprostinil. With this added medication, Daniel has completed and gradually improved his 6 minutes walk test. Now he walks an average of 600 meters with a saturation of 94 at exercise and back to 98 after he completes the test. While the downsides to his medications are minimal, Daniel does sometimes have random nosebleeds, which are attributed to sildenafil. That's what we think. He has borderline low platelet counts, which is known to be possible effect to Tyvaso. The only major downside to his medication is if he contracts a respiratory virus. Due to the inhaled Tyvaso, if he has a cough, he cannot take his medication. His specialist has advised us to use Ventolin and Frovent 30 minutes prior to treatment to prevent him from coughing out of the medication, if he's sick. However, if the cough is unmanageable, we must take him to emergency room for alternative treatment. His inhaled medication also interrupts his school day, as he must take it during class. Yet, in the face of those obstacles, we are grateful that Daniel is doing well due to his treatment. He's growing to be an active elementary school student. Like many children his age, he's expressed an interest in sports as well. He loves to play and lives his life uninhibited by his disease. Lastly, I would like to say that although there are no PH drugs approved for children, children benefit from drugs approved for adults. On behalf of my son and many children affected by this terrible illness, I ask the FDA to consider more studies to target the approval of treatment for children. Thank you.
Okay, now it's working. We really, when we learned that Martha was going to be able to attend today's meeting, we really thought it would be very, very helpful and important to hear the pediatric perspective. So Martha, thank you for joining us today. And thank you again to our panel members for your comments. So before we move on to the polling question, let me ask, so as I did with topic 1, how many of you felt that you heard your experiences being shared by at least one of the panelists here? Okay, it looks like the majority of you share similar experiences. And just to sort of recap what I heard, it sounds like the treatment regimen has changed over time. You've had to sort of determine which drug therapy works best for you. You seem to also have incorporated lifestyle changes. And so we are looking forward to hearing what the rest of you also have to say and experiences that you have. So let's go on to our polling question. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I mispronounce something, so jump in and tell me if I'm saying something wrong, okay? All right, so have you ever used any of the following drug therapies to help reduce the symptoms of pulmonary arterial hypertension? Check all that apply. And really quick, do you all have your clickers? Okay, good. Okay, A, endothelin receptor antagonists, such as Tracleer, Letairis, and Thelin. B, PDE5 inhibitors such as Revatio, Adcirca, and Levitra. C, prostaglandins such as Flolan, IV Rhomoduline, and Baraprost. D, calcium channel blockers. E, other, or F, I'm not sure. And also to those of you on the web, please make sure you enter your responses. Okay, so here's what we see here. All right, it looks like 88% of you are taking the ERA, endothelin receptor antagonists, followed by almost the same, 79% of you taking PDE5 inhibitors. 58% take the prostanoids. Am I saying that correctly? Okay, good. And we also have other, so we look forward to hearing some of the other drug therapies that you're using. And finally, calcium channel blockers. Okay, let's check in with the web. Do we have something similar?
So the biggest difference on the web is that about 50% of people said they took something other than these categories listed above.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so let me ask a question to sort of, begin this discussion. How many of you take these therapies? It sounds like most of you take these therapies on a daily basis. Is that correct? Okay, all right, and it sounds like it's multiple times a day too, right? Okay, lots of heads nodding. So would anybody like to start our discussion with what you are taking, and if you could point to specifically, if it works for you, how do you know that it's working for you? Would anybody like to share? Yes. Alex? Yes. Alex, yep.
Thank you. So right now I'm taking sildenafil. I'm about to take it. And I know that it's working because my 6-minute walk increased by over 100 feet. Prior to that, I was on Flolan for 4 years. My pulmonary arterial pressures were at 115. After, I think, about 4 months, they went down to 25. 4 years later, I was transitioned off of Flolan onto Tracleer. They shot back up to 55. And now that I'm on sildenafil, they're still at about 50. So I know that it's working because they could go way back up to 115 again, and I can do the 6-minute walk a lot further, plus walk a mile and not have to stop.
Okay. Thank you for giving us specifically those examples on how it's working for you. Yes, we have another comment here.
Okay, I started on Flolan because obviously it was many years ago. There was nothing else. It was that, or I had to have a lung transplant. At the time, it was going to be a lung and heart. I started on Flolan before it even became FDA approved, and I feel it saved my life. I can't believe what Katie went through because I didn't have anything like that. I did go on a couple oral medications, but they made me so flushed and I just felt terrible with them. Tracleer did a job on my liver, so I couldn't take that. And now I'm on Rhomoduline with the chrono pump, and I kind of liked better, like Veletri on my other pump. This seems more sensitive, and even though it's longer lasting and everything. But I wished I could. I even tried at one time coming off all IV medication and going with oral. And I went like for 4 months and I just couldn't breathe. So they had to put me back on IV treatment. But that's what I'm stuck with for now until something better comes along.
Thank you. And sorry, your name?
Oh, I'm Joanne.
Joanne. Thank you, Joanne. Yes, and right next to Joanne, we have another comment.
I'm Ann Lewis. And I've had PAH for about 5 years. I think I started with Revatio, and then it was changed to Adcirca. And then we tried Triclear because my pressures were not what the physician felt they should be. And that did not work for me because of the liver situation. I'm so grateful that there were other drugs we could turn to. We didn't have just one choice. So I'm on Lutaris now, and that seems to be working fine for my body. But I think I would want to go just a little further with this to say that I think the other medications, of course, oxygen, but exercise and diet change have made a tremendous difference for me. So I think it's been a holistic change in how I view my body and how I view PAH. I think it's hard to separate out, which is more effective. I've done some studies at NIH, so I know that my pressures are better. I know that I'm walking further. The stress test with checking the oxygen and all of that showed significant improvement even over a 6-month period. But I can't tease out, is it the medicine? Is it the exercise? Is it the diet change?
Great point. And to your point, we will have a second polling question in just a moment that's going to address some of the other non-drug therapies, such as lifestyle changes that you've made. I know we've heard some in the panel too. Anybody else that wants to share more about their current treatment regimen and if it's working for you and how you know?
I'm not sure how I know. I'm taking, as of December the 17th, I started on Summit, and that was just approved by FDA. And the pharmacist told me that he thought I would see a difference in 4 months. And I can't say that I've found that I have any significant improvement. And none of the other medications that I'm on, which is Adcirca, and Tadalafil, I don't see any significant changes. So I honestly, with the exception of the 6-minute walk, that seems to be the only real measurement that we have, and that's not been up. So we'll see, and probably a change in diet and exercise. I've been exercising, but maybe a change in diet would be helpful as well. I just don't know.
Blanche, thank you very much. I think we had one more comment here.
I just wanted to say I've been on the medications for 9 years, and I went from hiking and running and biking to not being able to walk up a flight of stairs within 6 months. Once I was started on the medication, starting with Revatio, it took about a year for me to get back to a comfortable level. I can, now walk on the treadmill, whereas I couldn't before. And one way I know for sure that the medicines are helping is I tried a quick 24-hour trip to New York City to visit my niece and put all of my meds I would need in that 24 hours in one bottle, and was so nervous about, well, what if I need them when I'm there in my backpack? Well, okay, then I'll put them in my purse. And it turned out I didn't put them in either place. So within 12 hours of getting to New York, I couldn't even walk a block. And I can walk on a treadmill with oxygen right now. So, I could not wait to get home. And but once, a day or two later after getting back on my regular medicine regimen, I was okay. But that was very scary, and it tells me that it's working.
Thank you for sharing that. And sorry, your name? Kathleen. And I believe we had one more comment.
Okay. Hi, I'm Stacy Doyle. I'm currently on Rhomoduline. When I started, I was on Ventavis and Triclear. And I noticed the biggest difference when I went on Triclear, because I came to Baltimore and was able to walk around 2 weeks, pretty much 2-3 weeks after I went on Triclear. One before, I couldn't even walk up a flight of steps when I came out of the hospital. And I was pretty stable on both those medications for almost 6 years. And then I started to get worse. I started to get more fluid in my legs, and started to have trouble walking up a slight incline, having trouble with stairs again. And I went on the Rhomoduline pump and stopped the Ventavis. And part of that was because I was having trouble getting all the treatments in. I was supposed to have 6 treatments a day, every 3 hours. I had a full-time job. I had a 2-hour commute every day. 10-year-old daughter, I wasn't getting my 6 treatments in a day. So that did affect me. I felt like that made me get a little worse. And then when I went on Rhomoduline, I got better. I mean, the symptoms with the fluid, what I'm able to do. So I know it's working, but I have to deal with the downside. I have to deal with the site pain. I have to deal with the site changes. And that is impacting my life, my work, my relationships. But I know I need it. So I'm thankful to have the medications that I had over the past 7 years, or I don't think I would be here. But it's just learning to deal with the side effects in order to continue to live your life.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm going to make a quick comment to those of you joining us on the web. I will be checking in with the phone in a few minutes, so if you'd like to dial in, please make sure you do that. Okay, and I do want to follow up with a question that somebody had, Blanche, I think it was you. Could you share your experience, all of you, would anybody like to share your experience on how long you give a particular treatment a try, or you try it before you know that it's not working and it's time to make a change? Blanche, I believe you mentioned about 4 months you had tried. So does anybody else want to share their experience with that? Yes, Lucille.
I actually can't share that experience, but in my situation, the combination therapy that I am, I'm actually too afraid to try something else for fear of it not working as good and not taking that chance for something else, because I understand that if the disease does progress, it is then either much more difficult to regress again, and or it does not at all. So contrary to that, I am too afraid to change and try out another therapy.
Let's do a show of, oh, yes, here. Thank you, Lucille.
My name is Patricia Feeney, and I have been on Rhomoduline since day 1, which my doctor included Letairis and Adcirca. I've been on it for 4 years now, and because my condition and my walking test was doing so well, I said to my doctor, if I'm doing so well, why can't I get off of one of the drugs? Well, believe me, if we were all doctors, we would not be here. I said to my doctor, I'd like to get off the Adcirca and try it. I've been off for 2 months, and I have been starting to experience a change in my breathing. I realized that my decision to go off it was not a good one, that he was 90% right, and I was 10% wrong. So we all realize that they put us on these drugs for a reason, and it's to help us. And I've never felt better. I went from being 20% to 97%. Since I've been off of the Adcirca for 2 months, I bet you I am down to about 50% and having a hard time with walking distance. My walking test was like up to 1,400. I don't know how they measure it out, but now if they were to test me today, I bet you it's probably way down. So next week I see him, and I'm going to go back on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, we have one comment here from Alex.
I can't really say how long I let a medication work, because I think I'm from the old school generation where if a doctor tells you take this, you take it and you don't question it. That was my only thing.
Thank you. Yes, and let's take one more comment there.
Hi, it's Colleen Connor. I was just going to say, when I was first diagnosed back in 2000 and late 2007, my doctor wanted to start me on the least intrusive therapy. So we started with calcium channel blockers. We gave it 3 to 4 months at a time. They just made me swell. My legs were probably 20 pounds heavier each side. I couldn't put any socks and shoes on, and I didn't feel any benefit other than like a swollen mess. So we moved on to Tracleer, and I still didn't feel a benefit to that. So after 3 months, he had Revatio. I still was like, Doc, I can't do anything more than I've ever been able to do since we came to you. So then I went to Ventavis, which was the breathing treatment. And most people, at the time, it was supposed to take 8 to 10 minutes. For me, for whatever reason, it would take me like 20 minutes until this nebulizer would finish. They had the nursing staff out to watch me do it. Of course, they would say, don't wear your oxygen. So the oxygen's off, so I'm blue, doing the nebulizer for Ventavis several times a day when I'm trying to work, stopping in the middle of meetings to say, excuse me while I break my vials, and I need to be quiet for the next 20 minutes during a conference call. It was when I was on Ventavis that I had the experience where I felt dizzy, and within 4 to 5 weeks, I could no longer think or read. And we were in an emergency situation. I clearly was in distress and not getting enough oxygen to my brain. So they put me on the Flolan at that time. And like I said, within a week and a half of being on Flolan, my brain unwound as my cardiac output improved. And that was a huge, huge life changer for me. So since then, I've been able to switch to, what's the name of the other version of Flolan, where I don't need to worry about ice packs, which is Velletri, which is a giant quality of life improvement to not have those ice packs on your hip and a frozen hip for years. So, but yeah, so mine, we started at the beginning at the smallest therapies, and then quickly kind of ramped up with, I'd say, 3 to 4 months in between each one.
Let's do a quick show of hands here. Thank you, Colleen. So Colleen mentioned, and now we've heard multiple times now, about 3 to 4 months of trying a drug therapy. You're able to tell whether it's working for you or not. By a show of hands, does that sound similar to what you think? Okay. So we have about 5 or 6 hands being raised. Thank you for that. Let me check in with the FDA panel. Ellis, I believe you had a question, and anybody else?
Well, I had a question, kind of a follow-up to the earlier panel, but this question will work. We had a question about the 6-minute walk and what it was people thought kept them from walking faster than they were able to walk. Could they walk faster if they had less shortness of breath, or was the problem energy? In other words, was it their legs just couldn't do it, or was it the breathing a problem? I wondered if we could get a show of hands on that.
Okay, great question. So did everybody hear that? The question is, what do you think, what specific symptom is it that maybe you were not able to complete the 6-minute walk test, or?
Well, what is it, why everyone walks at a certain maximum speed? Mm-hmm. The question is, finish the sentence, you could walk faster if not for, and is it shortness of breath or energy?
Okay, so let's do a show of hands. How many of you think it's the shortness of breath that was stopping you from walking faster on the 6-minute walk test? Okay, so we have, I'm counting about 13 to 15, about 17 hands or so being raised. Does that sound right? Okay. And the other, chest pain?
Energy.
Energy, okay.
Tiredness.
Okay. Tiredness. Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we have 5 hands being raised for that, so it sounds like it's more of a shortness of breath issue. Okay, thank you, Alice. Yep. All right, so let me do this. Let me check in with the web, see what comments are coming in there.
Just to get back to Ellis's question, on the web, they're also saying shortness of breath.
Okay.
We have a lot of similar comments on the web as to things we've heard before. People mentioning IV Rhomoduline, Revatio, oxygen therapy in general, Tracleer, Procardia, and some people have noted some bad experiences with IV regimens, and a few people have noted that they've seen significant improvements on some of the drugs we mentioned. I think overall we have a balance that reflects what we've heard in the room so far.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'm going to check in with the phones now. For those of you who are going to be providing us some comments on the phone, we'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on what specific things you'd look for in an ideal treatment. So, operator, can we have the first caller?
Yes, we do have a comment from Tony Minerva. Your line is open. Hi, I'm Tony. I'm a 46-year survivor with pulmonary hypertension. I was diagnosed when I was 2 months old. It's due to a congenital heart defect. I was first put on Tracleer in 2002. Before that, I was on no treatment. Just seeing my cardiologist every few months. And then in 2011, I was placed on Adcerta for 9 months, which I had to come off of due to intense joint pain. About a month or so later, I was placed onto Revatio, which I'm still on. The combination of these 2 drugs have been indispensable, really. I'm quite sure that I wouldn't still be here were it not for the medication. I don't know my walk test numbers. I don't keep track of them. I find doing that to just sort of provoke anxiety, and I really don't need that. But I can tell you that I do know my walk test has been better, as have my echocardiogram results. So that's, for me, fantastic. I do wish that going forward in finding medication, that of course there would be less side effects from the drugs and more convenience in both taking them and obtaining them.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Can we take one more caller? Okay.
Yes, we do have a comment from Orna Levy. Your line is open. Hi, I spoke earlier about swelling that I deal with as a result of pulmonary hypertension. I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with Rhomoduline, which is my IV medication. I have it through a PICC line in my arm. When I was first put on Rhomoduline, I was in the hospital. I could barely move due to my 500-pound weight. As they started me on the medication, of course, they're dilating my heart and lung blood vessels. So my heart was finally able to pump, which it hadn't been able to do for a very long time because I had constricted blood vessels. As a result, I became very, very, very flush, very hot. We had to put ice packs on me. Because I was so heavy, I couldn't move my own legs, so I had to ask the nurse to reposition my legs periodically because I would get so hot. I had severe nausea and diarrhea. So I remember one particular day I could only take eat one of 2 saltine crackers that day, which is impressive. Slowly, as my body began to adjust to it, those things calmed down a little bit, although I'm still on a daily anti-diarrhea dose that I take along with my 30 other oral medications. occasionally when I bite into something. I have occasional leg achiness, but all of that is worth enduring for the amazing benefits that I've achieved, received because of this medication. I can now walk 1.5 miles, where when I reached the hospital at 500 pounds, I was only able to walk about 4 feet. So there's a huge, tangible difference for me, besides the 300-pound weight loss, just mobility. Also, a couple of times you guys have mentioned sort of, is it tiredness or is it shortness of breath that causes you to have problems walking? And my answer is it is both combined, because a lack of oxygen causes both of those things. When you don't have enough oxygen in your body becomes fatigued. Your muscles don't have enough oxygen to function properly. So your muscles themselves get tired. There's not enough quick enough exchange of oxygen in and out of your muscles to refresh them. It also means that your brain becomes fatigued. You make mistakes. We call it pH brain, because you are unable to think as clearly. Being an attorney, that is, for me, the greatest downside to pH, my inability to focus for long periods of time like I used to. I can't function as well as an attorney because I don't have as clear thinking. I'm not as bright as I used to be, because there simply isn't as much oxygen in my brain consistently.
Thank you so much, Orna. Thank you for sharing those comments. And I saw heads nodding, especially when I heard the pH brain. I saw some heads nodding there, so it sounds like it's a shared experience with the concentration or memory or. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now let's move on to our next polling question. So everybody get your clickers out again. See here. Okay. All right. So the question is, and again, those of you on the web, if you could also let us know what your responses are. So the question is, what else are you doing to help reduce your symptoms of PAH? Check all that apply. A, other drugs such as blood thinners. B, supplemental oxygen. C, surgery such as lung or heart lung transplantation or atrial septostomy. D, lifestyle changes such as limited activity or changes in your home. E, other therapies not mentioned. Or F, I'm not doing or taking any therapies to treat symptoms. Okay. All right, so this is very interesting. We see that the majority of you have identified that there's other therapies not mentioned that you're doing to help reduce the symptoms of PAH, and so we want to hear more about that. And followed by D, lifestyle changes such as limit activity and changes in your home. Let's check in with the web. Are the polling responses similar?
On the web, we have a majority that are doing some type of lifestyle change, and then an equal distribution in taking blood thinners and supplemental oxygen. So it is pretty high. And then some have mentioned other therapies.
Okay, so slightly different. Okay. All right, great. So let's cover the, does anybody have anything more to add with the lifestyle changes? Because I'd like to spend some more time on some of the other therapies that haven't been mentioned. So are there any comments? Yes. Sorry?
I press C, but I see it sees 0, but I press C.
Oh, okay. I wonder why it did that. Thank you for telling us that you put that as an option. Thank you. Okay. So to the lifestyle changes, we heard everything from diet changes to, planning your day, making some changes around your home. Are there any comments that anybody wants to share on some of the lifestyle changes you've made before we move to some of the other therapies? Yes, Holly. We have Sarah coming to you.
I'm Holly. I talked earlier on the first panel. I think with the lifestyle changes, I would probably do more diet and exercise if I had more energy to do them. I have a treadmill at home. However, I've passed out on it a few times, so I'm afraid to do it when my husband's not home. So with his schedule with work and my schedule with work, it's just not a feasible thing to do. And probably if I had more time to make maybe healthier meals, that I would probably do that as well as some of the other people have spoken about.
Thank you, Holly. Anybody else? Yes, Colleen.
I've had some pretty good luck with alternative therapies. I used a lot of acupuncture at the beginning. It helped relieve the chest pressure and some of the feelings of breathlessness, and also for stress reduction around being pretty upset about such a diagnosis. And more recently, Reiki therapy, which is a form of energy healing, has been very helpful.
Okay, so alternative therapy. Okay. Oh, let's go here.
Hi, I'm Nicole Cooper, and I had open heart and lung surgery, and because my pH was caused from a blood clot. So after I had the surgery, going into my lifestyle, because the bottom of my lungs wasn't getting any blood for like 3 years. So after I had the surgery, me and my doctor came up with things that I could do as far as exercising. So I decided to learn how to swim, because she told me that swimming would help open my lungs. So I swim every day all year, except today I'm here. But I swim so that it really is the breathing part I have trouble with under the water. But as far as if I don't keep my lungs active, then they have a chance to collapse. So
thank you for sharing that. And let me stick to Nicole's point quickly. And it didn't seem like the polling question captured your response, so I'm curious, were there others that had also chosen the surgery as one of the treatments? Okay. Thank you, Nicole. Yes, we have a comment back here. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we did have one. Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
I spoke earlier. I'm Nicole. One of the things in terms of lifestyle that I changed was my diet from a regular carnivorous diet to a vegetarian diet that's largely vegan. I have eggs every now and then. And that helped me tremendously. And I'm not sure if I have lupus, as I said earlier, and I'm not sure if it helps by decreasing the inflammation in my system, which when my lupus is very inactive, I find I feel better in terms of my PAH symptoms. But in addition to the medication, the diet change really helped a lot.
Okay. So we've heard quite a bit about diet changes, reducing sodium. Let's take one more comment.
I just wanted to say that exercise has been a big factor that helps me. And I didn't realize it was helping until I was doing the treadmill, and I stopped for several months. And when I went to get my 6-minute walk, it was not good. And my doctor knew right away. He said, are you still doing the treadmill? And I was like, no. So he said, I can tell. So he said I needed to step it up. Now, I'm a PH patient. I was doing 30 minutes. I was like, so step it up to what? But I'm glad to say that I now can do an hour on the treadmill, but I have my liter flow is on 10. But that's helping me a lot.
Thank you. How many of you, by a show of hands, if you're comfortable to do so, also think that exercise is an important part of your treatment regimen? Okay, it looks like the majority of you. I see a lot of hands raised here. Okay. Let's focus a moment on some of the other therapies. We've heard acupuncture, we've heard alternative therapy, some energy healing therapy that you're doing. Anybody else want to share some experiences with other therapies? Yes, Martha.
Hi. We do know that PH patients do not do well with congestion, and my son in particular, he has seasonal allergies, and I know that, living in the Garden State, I live in New Jersey, maybe there's some people here that live also in New Jersey, do suffer with a lot of allergies. So we try to prevent that congestion on my son. So he's taken continuous medicine for allergies, such as he started with Zyrtec and now he's in Claritin. It is something that he's on all the time, every day. So it's something added to his treatment just to help to prevent the congestion.
Thank you for sharing that, Martha. Let's do another show of hands here, because I do recall hearing some other panel members, I believe, share that they were also taking some allergy medications. So who else takes allergy medications on some sort of daily basis or very frequent basis? Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm seeing about 6 hands raised. Okay, great. FDA panel, do you have any questions, any follow-up questions regarding some of these other therapies? Okay, great. So let me ask now to get some input from you on what would you look for in an ideal treatment. We've heard everything from, I wish the equipment or the management of all the equipment wasn't so cumbersome, to perhaps rather than IV medications, something oral. Any other thoughts that you want to share? Yes, Holly?
If we could find something that is more specific to just the lung vessels instead of all vessels, because the prostanoids, they dilate all the vessels, which in my case brings my regular blood pressure down very low. It runs about 90/58 on a routine basis, which I think contributes to my fatigue as well, because if you don't have the blood pressure behind you, you're not able to keep up with your activities. So if there was some way to find a drug that is more specific just to the lung blood vessels instead of throughout the body, that would be great.
Thank you, Holly. Yes, we have a few more hands raised.
My name is Nancy Maxwell. I think ease of use, and that's a relative term with PH, but I'm on Veletri, and it takes a lot of planning, just from when am I going to do the dose and where am I going to do it if I'm away from home. Do I have the proper sterile condition or close to sterile condition? If the weather's going to be bad, if we're going to get a snowstorm, if we think there's going to be electricity going out, what's going to be the plan for that? So any of the IV medications they're hard to use. And we already do so much planning in our daily life, just trying to live our daily life. The medications just add to that planning and that high degree of difficulty. So it would be really great if we can have something that was easier to use. My dream is a pill. Just something that would be easier to use. And
Thank you, Nancy. Yes.
Hi, Alex again. I would say something with not so many side effects. Obviously, medications are going to have side effects, but when I was on Flolan, I had everything: the jaw pain, the flushing, the leg pain, the nausea and the vomiting. I got the Flolan diet. I went from 180 pounds down to 92 pounds within a matter of months. I could not eat and breathe at the same time. It became a choice. And I believe that might have been a side effect of the Flolan.
Thank you, Alex. Anybody else? Yes, Lucille.
And of course, this may not be the right forum, but the cost of any of these medicines are just so astronomical. And I do know that a few in the support groups I go to, people were taken off the brand names, and whether they have generic or something similar to, but needless to say, they do not provide the performance that the brand names. So, I mean, the cost is a great deal in sometimes the doctor selecting, you know, what treatment they can be given in relation.
Thank you, Lucille. So that's probably a good lead-in to some of the questions that I know some of the FDA panel received during the break, earlier when we had the break. Ellis, would you mind rephrasing the question and answering some of the question that you received during break?
Okay, we received a couple questions about whether we could comment on any drugs that might be, you know, being developed to treat pulmonary hypertension. And the answer is that there are drugs being studied to treat pulmonary hypertension, and hopefully will bear fruit for people in this room at some point. But we're barred from discussing any kind of information about drugs that are under development because that's trade secret information. So we promise to keep that information confidential because it involves trade secrets and, you know, a lot of you know, proprietary information. So we can't talk about it. A point I'd like to make though about generics. Generics are very strictly regulated by FDA, and they have to be they have to perform similarly to the named drugs. And there are many people who believe that generics don't work as well as the brand name because, heck, if you pay less for it, it can't be as good, right? But that's not true. And we would love to dispel that way of thinking because it really isn't true because the standards are quite strict. They're tested. They have to meet certain performance standards. And I can guarantee you that any of us at the FDA who take drugs will always take a generic if it's available rather than a trade name because it's cheaper and it's just as good. So I'd like to add that.
Thank you very much, Ellis. So on that note, let me recap everything we discussed in topic 2. Again, a very, very rich conversation. We've learned so much from you, and we're very thankful for that. So we learned from you that many of you most of you have your current treatment regimen involves multiple medications, drug therapies. It sounds like many of you have had to change that treatment regimen over time based on what's working for you and what's not working for you. It sounds like many of you have incorporated lifestyle changes, everything from modifying how you go about your day, planning your day, to diet changes such as limiting your sugar or sodium. It sounds like you're also incorporating some alternative therapies that are helping you. And you've given us some really great feedback on what you're looking for in an ideal treatment. Additionally, I want to mention that you also brought up the downsides of the treatments that you're currently taking. We've heard nosebleeds, we heard a nagging cough. We heard dehydration. So we've captured all of that. And if there's something that we didn't capture today or that we couldn't get to today, I just want to remind everybody to, again, go to the public docket, visit the public docket, and provide your comments there. They're very, very valuable to us, and they'll all be part of the public record. So, yes, let's check in very quickly with the web.
Just to wrap up the discussion, we had a lot of comments on the web about ideal therapies, people just wanting, you know, fewer side effects in general, but specifically avoiding external IV lines, drugs that target the lungs or heart specifically instead of all blood vessels, and for personal oxygen carriers, things that, you know, what we said earlier, just making them more convenient, and just in general therapies that don't interfere with daily life as significantly.
Thank you, Graham. And thank you to all of you on the web for continuing to provide your comments. We really, really appreciate that, even though you weren't able to join us in person, that you've been so actively participating via the web. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, my colleague Sarah, for the open public comment period.
Good afternoon. Hello? Testing? Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Eggers, and I'm going to do the open public comment. We had 2 comments come in today, so we'll let you each speak for 3 minutes because we let the facilitated discussion go longer today. The purpose of this open public comment period, as Saujanya mentioned, is to give people a chance to make a comment that might be outside the scope of the discussion today, or make a comment by someone who's not a patient or a patient representative. FDA won't be able to address the comments that are made. We are in listening mode, but they are part of the transcript. They're part of the public record. And as a transparent process, if you are supported or funded or associated with an organization and you want to make that public as well, we encourage you to do so, although you don't have to. So we have Sally and then Rena, I think. So we're going to let Sally go first. Yep, I'm not going to use the timers, but I'll give you a gentle nudge if we need to move on. Thanks, Sally. Oh.
I'm from Patients Like Me. I'm representing about 350 to 400 patients on Patients Like Me who are suffering and living with the condition of pulmonary hypertension. I wanted to bring it to the attention of the group today because we actually have a relatively small number of patients on the site with this, and I wanted to come today to learn from all of you, and I've learned a lot, and I want to bring that information back to our patient population. We're a patient-powered research network that really is set up with the idea of being able to systematically collect information about your treatment experiences as well as your symptom experiences. And some of the things I heard today were consistent with some of the things our patients are already telling us. However, I think teasing this issue out of energy and fatigue is important because many of the patients on our side are telling us that their fatigue is actually more severe and that their shortness of breath actually, while severe, it's moderate to severe, and their fatigue seems to have a greater level of severity. So happening to understand that might be helpful. But the other thing, there are a couple of other symptoms our patients are telling us about more frequently, depression and anxiety. And I heard today a few things that actually could be teased out too. Some is just the anxiety of sleeping at night. And so the insomnia associated with that might be significant. And so these are the sorts of things, real world and quality of life issues that I think we could begin to learn more about. I finally wanted to say just a couple of things. One of the things that we didn't hit on today much about are clinical endpoints and then patient-reported outcome measures. I would encourage us to really start thinking about the experiences that the people were telling us about today from the perspective beyond a 6-minute walk. What can we learn more from the patient-reported outcome measures that would actually tell you a bit more about what their real-world experiences are? In fact, I would even challenge that the 6-minute walk is actually maybe not an accurate reflection of their real-world walking, because we know that the influence of weather, whether it's warm or cold or whatever, is actually influencing their ability to walk. Yet on a treadmill, they're doing better. So we may not be getting a real accurate measure. And then finally, I just really wanted to mention just the significant burden on patients with the treatments that they have, and encourage the FDA to find ways of really moving beyond the burdensome types of treatments, all of the equipment, really the heavy load that people are carrying. Because frankly, I think we also heard that it influences their ability to adhere appropriately to their regimens of their medications. So I think if we can really begin to look at some of these kinds of things, and I encourage people to think about joining Patients Like Me in the Patient-Powered Research Network to really start having a systematic way of collecting your data to aggregate that and then share that appropriately, not only with drug development, but also with the FDA, and we'd be happy to help you with that. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment, and I really want to thank all the patients. I will be bringing your voice back to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. And then we have Reno. You turn the mic on.
Hello? Yes. My name is Reno Albrighetti, and I'm the president of the Pulmonary Hypertension.
Can you speak in a little bit more? Just take it off. You can take
Okay. Okay, thank you. My name is Reno Aldrighetti, and I'm the president of the Pulmonary Hypertension Association. First of all, we really want to thank you for this program and the opportunity for you to hear from patients. It's as you know, something that's unique. It's valuable and it's appreciated. What I'd like to do is speak a little more broadly about some of the issues that really may go beyond the scope of what the FDA does, but are important in looking at comprehensive treatment of this disease. First of all, looking at data from the REVEAL registry, which is the largest registry of pulmonary hypertension patients ever produced, several physicians began to produce papers about 3 years ago that demonstrated that during the past 20 years, there has been little, if any, reduction in the onset of symptoms for the point of diagnosis to onset of symptoms for this disease. So basically 20 years ago, it didn't matter. There were no treatments, as you know. Today, it matters a great deal if patients don't get diagnosed. And so what we are doing is we have created about a year and a half ago an early diagnosis campaign, and that's based on doctors working together through 3 committees and an advanced public relations program to get information out to the general public. But ultimately, what is going to be very important is simplifying diagnosis for this disease. It is many patients are still not seen in time to take advantage of the 12 treatments that are now available. Another issue that is really important to understand is that this field has grown from about 100 treating physicians in 2001 to over 10,000 today. And not all of those physicians, and I would say most of those physicians, are not connected to the rapidly developing research in this field. Consequently, with most of those doctors seeing 2 or 3 patients, it becomes very important to create some order in this field. You know, if you're in France, there is a clear system of treatment, and French doctors will tell you that they don't have misdiagnosis issues. Here, any doctor who wants to treat pulmonary hypertension can. So working with over the last 2 years with leading physicians in the field through 4 committees, we have now created a system for the accreditation of PH centers. We're in the pilot stage of that project, and completing that and following the evaluations, we will be launching that program within the next 2 months. And third and finally, it is important not only to get drugs approved, but it is important to get drugs in the hands of patients. We all know that our healthcare system is changing. What we are seeing in terms of specialty pharmacies is mergers, and what we are seeing is payers coming into the field with the control over how patients are getting their drugs, often causing delays in patients getting their drugs. And consequently, we have, working with patients, family members, medical professionals, the specialty pharmacies themselves, and the pharmaceutical companies have created a cooperative structure to begin to create feedback on how these systems are working. And that program is now entering phase 2, where we will be gathering a great deal of feedback on how these systems are working. So Those are a few of the things that...
Gina, we're going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up right now.
Great.
Simply to say again, thank you, and just a word about what you did in terms of adjusting your position in terms of sildenafil. We know that the pediatric PH physicians greatly appreciate what you did in listening to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I believe that Norman Stockbridge will be giving some closing remarks to end the meeting.
Yeah, I want to say that the division that I work in and Dr. Targum to my left works in manages a portfolio of drugs that try to prevent need for dialysis, prevent heart attacks, prevent strokes. But when we got polled maybe 18 months ago to name a patient group that we'd like to interface with and have some dialogue, it took no time at all to decide it was you that we wanted to talk with. So I very much appreciate the effort that it took, whether you came from inside the Capital Beltway or Connecticut or Texas. The effort that you made coming and sharing your experiences with us is very much appreciated. We, I think, got some useful, interesting insights from you today, something we can carry into what remains a lively development area. And I'm hopeful that in years to come you'll get some better therapies and some different mechanisms. But mostly I want to say thank you very much for your efforts in coming today.